The crisp morning air nipped at Alexander Reeves' exposed skin as he jogged along the familiar path of Central Park. The rhythmic pounding of his feet against the pavement and the steady in and out of his breath created a soothing melody, drowning out the gradually awakening city around him. At 35, Alexander was at the pinnacle of success, a self-made tech millionaire whose innovative social media platform had revolutionized online communication. Yet, despite his wealth and acclaim, he found solace in these solitary morning runs, a ritual that grounded him amidst the chaos of his high-powered life. As he rounded a bend, the path opened up to reveal a cluster of benches overlooking the lake. It was a picturesque scene, the kind that usually lifted his spirits and reinvigorated his sense of purpose. But today, something, or rather, someone, caught his eye and made him slow his pace. Seated on one of the benches was a woman, her appearance a stark contrast to the manicured beauty of the park. Her clothes were worn and mismatched, her hair a tangled mess of gray and brown. Yet there was something about her posture, the way she held herself with a quiet dignity, that made Alexander pause. She wasn't hunched over or cowering like many of the homeless individuals he'd encountered before. Instead, she sat upright, her gaze fixed on the glistening water before her, a tattered notebook clutched in her weathered hands. Curiosity piqued, Alexander found himself veering off his usual path. As he approached, he could see that the woman was writing furiously, her pen flying across the pages with a sense of urgency that seemed at odds with her peaceful surroundings. He cleared his throat softly, not wanting to startle her. "Good morning," he said, his voice gentle. The woman looked up, and Alexander was struck by the intensity of her gaze. Her eyes were a deep, piercing blue, intelligent and alert, despite the dark circles that surrounded them. For a moment, she seemed to look right through him, as if assessing his very soul. Then, almost imperceptibly, her features softened. "Good morning," she replied, her voice surprisingly melodious and articulate. "It's a beautiful day, isn't it?" Alexander nodded, taken aback by the normalcy of the exchange. "It is. I hope I'm not disturbing you." "I couldn't help but notice how engrossed you were in your writing." A shadow passed over the woman's face, and she clutched the notebook closer to her chest. "Just some observations," she said evasively. "The world is full of interesting phenomena, if you know where to look." Intrigued, Alexander gestured to the empty space beside her. "Do you mind if I sit for a moment? I'm Alexander, by the way." She hesitated for a split second before nodding. "Sarah," she offered in return. "Sarah Thompson." As Alexander lowered himself onto the bench, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Sarah than met the eye. Her name, the way she spoke, it all hinted at a background that seemed incongruous with her current state. "So, Sarah," he began, trying to keep his tone casual, "are you a writer? Or a scientist, perhaps?" He nodded towards her notebook. Sarah's lips curved into a wry smile. "Once upon a time, I was many things. Now, I'm just trying to make sense of a world that often doesn't make much sense at all." There was a weight to her words that Alexander couldn't ignore. He found himself wanting to know more, to understand what series of events could have led this clearly intelligent woman to her current circumstances. "I don't mean to pry," he said carefully, "but I get the feeling there's quite a story behind those words." Sarah turned to look at him fully, her gaze scrutinizing. "And why would my story interest a man like you, Alexander? You're clearly successful, probably busy. Why stop to chat with a homeless woman in the park?" Her directness caught him off guard, but Alexander appreciated her candor. It was refreshing compared to the often superficial interactions he experienced in his professional life. "Honestly," he replied, deciding to match her frankness, "because you intrigue me. There's a disconnect between who you appear to be and who I suspect you actually are. And yes, I am busy and successful, but that doesn't mean I've lost interest in the world around me or the people in it." Sarah seemed to consider his words carefully, her fingers absently tracing the cover of her notebook. After a long moment, she spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. Have you ever had a moment, Alexander, where your entire life pivoted on a single decision, where everything you thought you knew, everything you'd worked for, suddenly hung in the balance? The question resonated with Alexander more than Sarah could have known. His mind flashed back to the early days of his company, to a crucial moment when he'd had to decide between accepting a lucrative but ethically questionable contract or staying true to his principles at the risk of bankruptcy. "I have," he answered softly. "It's not an easy place to be." Sarah nodded, a flicker of understanding passing between them. "Well, imagine making what you believe is the right choice, the moral choice, only to have it cost you everything. Your career, your reputation, your home, your family." Alexander felt a chill run down his spine, not just from the implication of Sarah's words, but from the quiet intensity with which she spoke them. This wasn't just a story of bad luck or poor decisions. There was something deeper, more complex at play. "What happened, Sarah?" he asked, his voice gentle but urgent. "What choice did you have to make?" Sarah's eyes darted around, as if checking for eavesdroppers before leaning in slightly. "I was a geneticist," she began, her voice low. "One of the top researchers in my field. I was working on a project that had the potential to revolutionize personalized medicine. But then I discovered something that certain powerful people wanted to keep hidden." Alexander leaned in, captivated. "What did you discover?" Sarah shook her head, a look of fear flashing across her face. "I can't. It's not safe. But I refuse to be part of it, refuse to let my work be used for what they had planned. So they discredited me, destroyed my career, my life. Made sure no one would believe anything I had to say." The gravity of Sarah's words hung in the air between them. Alexander's mind raced, trying to process the implications of what she was saying. If what she was telling him was true, this went beyond just one woman's tragedy. It hinted at a conspiracy with far-reaching consequences. "Sarah," he said, his voice filled with a mix of concern and determination, "I believe you, and I want to help. Whatever happened to you, whatever you discovered, it doesn't have to end here. With my resources, my connections, maybe we can." But Sarah was already shaking her head, cutting him off. "No, Alexander, you don't understand. These people, they're powerful, ruthless. They've already taken everything from me. I can't risk involving anyone else." Alexander was about to protest when the sharp trill of his phone cut through the morning air. He glanced at the screen to see his assistant's name flashing urgently. The real world was intruding, reminding him of meetings, deadlines, and responsibilities. Sarah gave him a sad smile. "You should go. Your world is calling." But Alexander hesitated, torn between the demands of his life and the mystery unfolding before him. He couldn't just walk away, not when he felt he was on the cusp of uncovering something monumental. "I have to take this," he said, standing reluctantly. "But Sarah, please, will you be here tomorrow? Same time. I want to hear more, to understand. I truly believe I can help." Sarah looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Finally, she gave a small nod. "Tomorrow," she agreed softly. "But Alexander, be careful. Once you step into this, there's no going back." As Alexander jogged away, his mind whirling with questions and possibilities, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life was about to change dramatically. The chance encounter in the park was just the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything he thought he knew about success, power, and the true cost of doing the right thing. Little did he know that the notebook clutched in Sarah's hands held secrets that could shake the foundations of the scientific world, and that powerful forces were already mobilizing to ensure those secrets never saw the light of day. The race against time had begun, and Alexander Reeves found himself unexpectedly at the center of a storm that had been brewing for years. As he reached the park's exit, Alexander cast one last glance over his shoulder. Sarah was still there, her silhouette etched against the morning light, a solitary figure carrying the weight of an unimaginable secret. With a deep breath, He stepped out onto the bustling New York street, knowing that tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. The next 24 hours passed in a blur for Alexander Reeves. His mind, usually laser-focused on the intricate details of running his tech empire, kept drifting back to the enigmatic Sarah Thompson and the tale of conspiracy she had hinted at. As he sat through board meetings and conference calls, his thoughts were filled with piercing blue eyes and tattered notebooks. When his alarm blared at 5 a.m. the following morning, Alexander was already wide awake. He dressed quickly, opting for a more casual outfit than his usual running gear. As he left his penthouse, he instructed his driver to drop him off a few blocks from the park entrance. Something told him that discretion would be crucial in the days to come. The pre-dawn air was heavy with moisture, a light fog rolling off the lake and shrouding the park in an ethereal mist. Alexander's footsteps echoed softly on the damp pavement as he made his way to the bench where he had first encountered Sarah. His heart sank as he approached. The bench was empty. Had she changed her mind? Or worse, had someone gotten to her first? Alexander's mind raced with possibilities, each more alarming than the last. He was about to turn back when a voice spoke from behind him, nearly causing him to jump. "I wasn't sure you'd come." Alexander whirled around to find Sarah emerging from the shadows of a nearby copse of trees. She looked even more haggard than the day before, dark circles under her eyes suggesting a sleepless night. "Of course I came," Alexander replied, relief evident in his voice. "I couldn't stop thinking about what you told me yesterday." Sarah nodded, her eyes darting around nervously. "Walk with me," she said, setting off down a narrow path that led away from the main thoroughfare. Alexander fell into step beside her, matching her brisk pace. As they walked, Sarah began to speak, her voice low and urgent. "Before I tell you anything more, you need to understand the risks. The people involved in this, they're not just powerful in terms of money or influence. They have reach into every corner of society: government, law enforcement, media. If they even suspect you're helping me, your life as you know it will be over." Alexander felt a chill run down his spine, but his resolve remained firm. "I understand," he said, "but I also know that sometimes doing the right thing means taking risks. Please, Sarah, tell me everything." Sarah was quiet for a long moment, the only sound the crunch of gravel beneath their feet. Finally, she spoke. "It started 5 years ago. I was leading a research team at Genovex, one of the world's top biotech firms. We were working on a breakthrough in epigenetics, a way to selectively activate or deactivate certain genes in living organisms. As Sarah delved into the technical details of her research, Alexander found himself captivated. Despite his background in technology rather than biology, he could grasp the monumental implications of what she was describing. The potential applications were staggering. Sarah continued, "We could potentially cure genetic diseases, reverse aging, even enhance human capabilities. But I was naive. I thought we were working towards the betterment of humanity." Her voice caught, and she paused their walk, turning to face Alexander directly. "What I didn't realize was that our research was being funneled to a shadow organization within the government. They weren't interested in curing diseases. They wanted to create the perfect soldier, spies whose very DNA could be altered to fit any mission profile." Alexander's mind reeled at the implications. "But surely that's not possible. It sounds like science fiction." Sarah's laugh was bitter. 5 years ago, I would have agreed with you, but we were closer than you could imagine. And that's when things started to go wrong." As they resumed walking, Sarah recounted how she had stumbled upon encrypted files detailing the true purpose of their research. She described clandestine meetings with government officials, thinly veiled threats, and her growing horror as she realized the full scope of what was being planned. "I couldn't be part of it," she said, her voice breaking. "I tried to alert the authorities, the media, anyone who would listen. But they were always one step ahead. My evidence disappeared. My colleagues turned against me, claiming I was unstable, paranoid. My reputation was systematically destroyed." Alexander listened in stunned silence, his tech-savvy mind already formulating strategies, thinking of ways his resources could be used to uncover the truth. But Sarah wasn't finished. "It wasn't just my career they took," she whispered. "My husband, he died in a car accident that I'm certain was no accident at all. My children were taken by child services after I was declared mentally unfit. I lost everything, Alexander. Everything except this." She patted the worn satchel at her side, which Alexander assumed contained the notebook he'd seen her writing in. "I managed to save some of my research, encoded in a way that only I can decipher. It's the only proof I have of what really happened." As the first rays of sunlight began to pierce through the trees, Sarah and Alexander found themselves at a secluded outlook overlooking the city skyline. The juxtaposition of Sarah's disheveled appearance against the glittering backdrop of New York skyscrapers was stark, a visual reminder of how far she had fallen. Alexander's mind was racing, processing everything he had heard. Part of him, the logical, business-minded part, was screaming that this was insanity, that he should walk away before he got in too deep. But another part, the part that had driven him to build his company on principles of ethical technology and user privacy, knew he couldn't turn his back on this. "Sarah," he said, his voice filled with determination, "I believe you, and I want to help. But we need to be smart about this. If what you're saying is true, we're up against forces that won't hesitate to destroy us both." Sarah looked at him, hope and fear warring in her eyes. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you risk everything to help a stranger?" Alexander took a deep breath, considering his words carefully. "Because sometimes in life, we're presented with a moment where we have to decide who we really are. This is that moment for me. I've built my career on the belief that technology should empower people, not control them. If there's even a chance that your research is being misused in the way you've described, I have a moral obligation to help stop it." He paused, a wry smile crossing his face. "Plus, I've always had a bit of a hero complex. Just ask my board of directors." The joke, small as it was, seemed to break some of the tension. Sarah's shoulders relaxed slightly, and for the first time since they'd met, Alexander saw a glimmer of real hope in her eyes. "All right," she said. "Where do we start?" Alexander's mind was already churning with possibilities. "First, we need to get you somewhere safe. I have a private property upstate that's off the grid. No electronic surveillance, no paper trail. We can use it as a base of operations while we figure out our next move." Sarah nodded, but her expression remained guarded. "And then, Alexander said, his eyes gleaming with the excitement of a new challenge, "we start digging. I have resources, contacts in the tech world who owe me favors. We'll need to be careful, move slowly, but I think we can start to unravel this conspiracy thread by thread." As they stood there, the city awakening beneath them, neither Alexander nor Sarah could fully grasp the magnitude of what they were undertaking. They were an unlikely pair, a disgraced scientist and a tech millionaire, about to take on shadowy government organizations and powerful corporations. What they did know was that the path ahead would be fraught with danger. Trust would be a precious commodity, and every move they made would need to be calculated and precise. The notebook in Sarah's satchel held secrets that could reshape the future of humanity, for better or for worse. As they made their way out of the park, planning their journey to the safe house, Alexander felt a mix of exhilaration and fear. He had always thrived on challenges, on pushing the boundaries of what was possible, but this was unlike anything he had ever faced before. Little did he know that at that very moment, in a nondescript office building across town, a team of analysts was poring over surveillance footage from Central Park. A red flag had been raised. The homeless woman they had been monitoring for years had made contact with someone new, someone with resources, influence, and a reputation for disrupting the status quo. As Alexander Reeves' face flashed across their screens, a senior official picked up the secure phone line. "Sir," he said, his voice grave, "we may have a situation developing. The Thompson woman has made contact with Alexander Reeves. There was a long pause on the other end of the line before a voice responded. Initiate Protocol Omega. We can't allow this to go any further. With those words, the stakes of the game Alexander and Sarah had just entered were raised exponentially. The race to uncover the truth and stay alive in the process had officially begun. The safe house, as Alexander had called it, turned out to be a sprawling Victorian mansion nestled in the Catskill Mountains. As their unmarked car wound its way up the private road, Sarah pressed her face against the window, drinking in the sight of endless trees and the occasional glimpse of a distant peak. After years of concrete and asphalt, the lush greenery felt almost surreal. "Welcome to Ravenswood," Alexander said as they pulled up to the grand entrance. "It's been in my family for generations, but I've made some modifications." Sarah raised an eyebrow. Modifications? A ghost of a smile played on Alexander's lips. Let's just say it's a perfect blend of 19th century charm and 21st century security. As they stepped inside, Sarah's jaw dropped. The interior was a stunning fusion of classic architecture and cutting-edge technology. Holographic displays flickered to life as they passed, showing everything from weather reports to real-time security feeds of the surrounding forest. The entire property is surrounded by a quantum encryption field, Alexander explained as he led her through the house. Any unauthorized electronic signals are instantly scrambled. We're effectively invisible here. Sarah nodded, impressed despite herself. As they entered what appeared to be a study, she finally allowed herself to relax slightly, sinking into a plush armchair. "So," she said, fixing Alexander with an intense gaze, "now that we're here, I think it's time I showed you exactly what we're dealing with." With trembling hands, she reached into her worn satchel and pulled out the tattered notebook. "This contains the key to decoding my research files," she explained. "But it's not just a simple cipher. The code is based on a complex algorithm that changes based on biological markers." Alexander leaned forward, intrigued. "Biological markers?" Sarah nodded. "My DNA, specifically. The code restructures itself based on my current genetic expression, which changes subtly over time and in response to environmental factors. It's a living cipher, virtually unbreakable without a direct genetic sample from me at the exact time of encoding." Alexander let out a low whistle. "That's incredible, and more than a little terrifying." "Exactly," Sarah said grimly, "which is why they want me so badly. Even if they got their hands on this notebook, without me, it's useless." As Sarah began to decode the first pages of her research, Alexander set up a secure workstation. Hours passed in a blur of complex equations, molecular diagrams, and hushed discussions. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the study, the full picture of Sarah's research finally began to emerge. "My God," Alexander breathed, staring at the holographic display hovering above the desk. "This goes beyond anything I imagined. You've essentially found a way to rewrite the fundamental code of life itself." Sarah nodded, her face a mask of conflicting emotions. "The applications are limitless. Cure any genetic disease, enhance human capabilities, potentially even reverse aging. But in the wrong hands. It could be used to create the perfect weapon," Alexander finished. "Soldiers whose very DNA could be altered to fit any mission profile. Spies who could change their appearance at will. It's like something out of a science fiction novel. Except it's very, very real," Sarah said softly. "And there's more. In the process of this research, I stumbled upon something else. Something that, if I'm right, could change our understanding of human history itself." Alexander's eyebrows shot up. "What do you mean?" Sarah took a deep breath. "I found anomalies in the human genome that don't make sense from an evolutionary standpoint. Sequences that appear to be artificially inserted." The implications hung heavy in the air between them. Alexander's mind reeled, trying to process what Sarah was suggesting. "Are you saying?" "I'm saying that at some point in our distant past, Someone, or something, may have tinkered with human DNA. Sarah finished. And I think whoever is after my research now knows this too. They're not just looking to create super soldiers. They're trying to unlock the secrets of whoever did this to us in the first place. The silence that followed was broken by a sudden, sharp beeping from one of the security panels. Alexander rushed over, his face paling as he read the display. "We've got company," he said tersely. "Multiple vehicles approaching from the main road, and they're not slowing down." Sarah's eyes widened in fear. How? How did they find us so quickly? Alexander's mind raced. "I don't know, but we need to move. Now." He rushed to a bookshelf, pulling the hidden lever that caused a section of the wall to slide away, revealing the secret passage. "This leads to an underground bunker. We'll be safe there while I figure out what's going on." As they hurried through the passage, the sounds of breaking glass and splintering wood echoed from above. Sarah clutched her notebook tightly to her chest, her breath coming in short gasps. They emerged into a state-of-the-art command center, walls lined with screens showing every angle of the property. Alexander's fingers flew over a control panel, activating additional security measures. "Okay," he said, his voice tense. "We're locked down. They can tear the house apart, but they won't find us here." He turned to one of the larger screens, which showed a satellite view of the area. "Now let's see who our uninvited guests are, shall we?" As they watched, a fleet of black SUVs came to a stop in front of the mansion. Men in tactical gear poured out, their movements precise and coordinated. But it was the figure that emerged from the lead vehicle that made Sarah gasp. "No," she whispered. "It can't be." Alexander turned to her, concern etched on his face. "Sarah, who is that?" Sarah's face had gone deathly pale. "That's Dr. Evelyn Frost. She was my mentor, my friend. She died in a lab explosion 3 years ago. At least, that's what I was told." On the screen, Dr. Frost surveyed the mansion with cold efficiency, her silver hair gleaming in the moonlight. She raised a hand, and the tactical team began to spread out, searching the property. "I don't understand," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "Evelyn was the one who first alerted me to the dangers of our research. She helped me go into hiding. Why would she?" Her voice trailed off as a horrible realization dawned. Alexander watched as a range of emotions played across Sarah's face. Confusion, betrayal, and finally, a grim determination. "We've been played," Sarah said quietly. "All this time, I thought I was running from shadowy government agencies. But it was Evelyn all along. She used me, used my research, and now she's come to collect." Alexander's mind was already racing, formulating plans and discarding them just as quickly. "Okay," he said, trying to keep his voice calm. "This changes things, but we're not beaten yet. We have the advantage of knowing the truth now." Sarah nodded, her initial shock giving way to a steely resolve. "You're right. And there's something else." She opened her notebook, flipping to a section near the back. "I never told anyone this, not even Evelyn, but I made a breakthrough just before everything fell apart. Something that could neutralize the effects of genetic manipulation." Alexander's eyes widened. "A failsafe." "Exactly," Sarah said. "If we can complete this research, we might have a way to stop whatever Evelyn and her team are planning." As they bent over the notebook, poring over Sarah's final breakthrough, the screens around them showed Dr. Frost and her team tearing the mansion apart. But in their underground sanctuary, a spark of hope had been kindled. Unbeknownst to either of them, high above the Earth's atmosphere, a satellite of unknown origin adjusted its position, its powerful sensors focused intently on the Catskill mansion. In a dimension beyond human perception, ancient intelligences stirred, awakened by the sudden advancement in genetic research. The game was no longer just about human politics and power. The very future of humanity hung in the balance. As dawn broke over the mountains, Sarah and Alexander worked feverishly, racing against time to unlock the secrets hidden in Sarah's research. They were no longer just two individuals fighting against a corrupt system. They had become the unwitting guardians of humanity's past, and possibly its future. In the mansion above, Dr. Evelyn Frost stood in the ruined study, her face a mask of frustration. She pulled out a sleek communications device, unlike anything available to the public. "They're not here," she said tersely. "Initiate global search protocols and contact our off-world associates. Tell them the experiment has entered its final phase." As she ended the transmission, her eyes gleamed with an inhuman light. The hunt was on, and the stakes were higher than Alexander or Sarah could possibly imagine. The subterranean command center hummed with tension as Alexander and Sarah worked tirelessly, their faces illuminated by the eerie glow of multiple screens. Days had passed since their narrow escape, and the outside world seemed to exist in another dimension entirely. In this cocoon of technology and secrets, time was measured not in hours, but in breakthroughs and setbacks. "I think I've got something," Alexander murmured, his fingers flying across a holographic keyboard. A 3D model of a DNA strand materialized in the air between them, sections highlighted in pulsating red. "Look at this sequence. It's not just artificially inserted. It's adaptive." Sarah leaned in, her eyes widening. "My God, you're right. It's almost as if it was designed to evolve." A new voice finished. Both Alexander and Sarah whirled around, hearts pounding. Standing in the doorway of the command center was a figure they had never seen before, a tall, slender woman with almond-shaped eyes that seemed to shift color in the dim light. Alexander's hand moved towards a concealed weapon, but the stranger raised her hands in a placating gesture. "I mean you no harm," she said, her voice carrying an accent that was impossible to place. "My name is Zara, and I'm here to help." "How did you get in here?" Alexander demanded, his mind racing through the supposedly impenetrable security measures. Zara's lips curved into an enigmatic smile. "The same way you did, Mr. Reeves, through an invitation coded in your very DNA." Sarah gasped, pieces of a cosmic puzzle suddenly clicking into place. "You're one of them, aren't you? The ones who tinkered with human DNA in the past." Zara nodded, her form seeming to shimmer slightly, as if not entirely solid. "We have many names in your mythologies: gods, angels, ancient astronauts. The truth, as always, is far more complex." As Zara began to explain, the world as Alexander and Sarah knew it shifted on its axis. The story that unfolded was one of an ancient, galaxy-spanning civilization that had seeded life on countless worlds, including Earth. Humanity was part of a grand experiment in evolution and consciousness, guided subtly over millennia by unseen hands. "But something has gone wrong," Zora continued, her expression grave. "The adaptive sequences we inserted into your genome were meant to activate gradually, allowing your species to evolve into a form capable of joining the greater galactic community. But someone has discovered how to accelerate the process." "Evelyn," Sarah whispered, the weight of betrayal heavy in her voice. Zara nodded. "Dr. Frost and her associates have tapped into knowledge they are not ready for. They seek to force humanity's evolution, to create a new species under their control. If they succeed, the consequences would be catastrophic, not just for Earth, but for the delicate balance of life throughout the galaxy." Alexander's mind reeled, struggling to process the implications. "So what do we do? How do we stop them?" "That," Zora said, turning to Sarah, "is where your research comes in. The failsafe you discovered, it's not just a way to neutralize genetic manipulation. It's a key to unlocking humanity's true potential, but only if activated correctly and at the right time." As they delved deeper into Sarah's research, guided by Zora's otherworldly knowledge, a plan began to take shape. But their progress was suddenly interrupted by a blaring alarm. "Proximity alert," Alexander announced, rushing to a control panel. "Multiple bogies approaching. And something else. Something big in low Earth orbit." The main screen flickered to life, showing a massive otherworldly vessel descending through the atmosphere. Smaller craft, clearly of human military design, swarmed around it like angry bees. "It appears," Zara said calmly, "that Dr. Frost has called in her off-world allies. And your government has responded." "We're out of time," Sarah said, her voice tight with urgency. "We need to finish this now." What followed was a frantic race against time, as battles raged in the skies above and government forces clashed with Evelyn's private army on the ground. Alexander, Sarah, and Zara worked to complete the failsafe protocol. The command center shook with distant explosions. Dust rained from the ceiling as the very foundations of the earth seemed to tremble. On the screens, they watched in awe and terror as advanced weaponry lit up the sky, the likes of which humanity had never seen. "It's done," Sarah exclaimed, holding up a vial of shimmering, opalescent liquid. "The failsafe is complete. But how do we distribute it?" Zara's form began to glow, her human appearance melting away to reveal a being of pure energy. "I can help with that," she said, her voice now resonating on multiple frequencies. "But be warned, activating this failsafe will change everything. Humanity will take its first true steps into a larger universe. There's no going back." Alexander and Sarah shared a look, years of struggle and discovery reflected in their eyes. In that moment, they weren't a disgraced scientist and a tech millionaire. They were representatives of humanity, standing at the threshold of a new era. "Do it," they said in unison. Zara enveloped the vial in her radiant form, and for a moment, the entire bunker was bathed in blinding light. When it faded, the vial was empty, and Zara looked noticeably diminished. "It is done," she said softly. "The failsafe has been released into the atmosphere. It will take time to affect everyone, but the process cannot be stopped now." As if on cue, the sounds of battle above began to fade. The screens showed the alien ship retreating, Earth's military forces standing down in confusion. In the forests surrounding the mansion, both Evelyn's forces and the government troops were stopping, looking around in bewilderment as new awareness blossomed in their minds. "What happens now?" Alexander asked, feeling both exhilarated and terrified. Zara's form flickered, growing fainter. "Now, you rebuild. You learn. You grow. My people will be watching, but the choices are yours to make. This is your world, your future." As Zara faded from view, her last words echoed in the chamber. "Remember, the greatest adventures lie ahead." Alexander and Sarah stood in stunned silence for a moment, the weight of what they had just done settling over them. Then, with a shared nod of determination, they began to plan their next moves. The world above was in chaos, struggling to come to terms with new realities and expanded consciousness. They had won the battle against those who would control humanity's evolution, but the real work was just beginning. As they emerged from the bunker into a world forever changed, Alexander couldn't help but smile. "You know," he said to Sarah, squinting in the bright sunlight, "when I stopped to talk to a homeless woman in the park, I didn't expect it to end with saving the world and ushering in a new era for humanity." Sarah laughed, the sound bright and full of hope. "Well, Mr. Reeves, I've learned that the universe has a funny way of exceeding our expectations." As they made their way towards the ruined mansion, plans already forming for how to guide humanity through its first steps into a larger galactic community, neither of them noticed the small, innocuous-looking satellite that tracked their movement. In a hidden facility deep beneath the Pentagon, Dr. Evelyn Frost watched their progress on a monitor, her expression unreadable. "Begin Phase 2, she said quietly to her team. "They've opened the door. Now, let's see what comes through." The universe, it seemed, wasn't finished with Earth just yet. As humanity stood on the brink of a new cosmic dawn, ancient forces stirred in the depths of space, their attention now firmly fixed on the little blue planet that had just announced its presence on the galactic stage. The adventure, as Zara had said, was only beginning. The world had changed irrevocably in the weeks following what the media had dubbed the awakening. Humanity grappled with its newfound awareness, struggling to comprehend the vastness of the cosmos and their place within it. For Alexander Reeves and Sarah Thompson, however, there was little time to contemplate these philosophical quandaries. They had work to do. The duo had established a base of operations in a repurposed Cold War-era bunker deep in the Rockies. Here, surrounded by a curious blend of cutting-edge technology and hastily assembled equipment, they coordinated global efforts to manage the aftermath of the awakening. Another riot in Beijing. Alexander sighed, his eyes flickering over one of the many holographic displays that filled the room. It seems not everyone is thrilled about our cosmic heritage. Sarah nodded grimly, her fingers dancing over a complex interface. Can you blame them? We've essentially told the world that everything they believed about human history and our place in the universe is wrong. It's bound to cause some friction. As if to underscore her point, a new alert flashed across the main screen. Alexander's eyes widened as he read the report. Sarah, look at this. There's been a break-in at CERN. Someone's trying to access the Large Hadron Collider. Sarah was instantly at his side, her face pale. It's got to be Evelyn. She's making her move. Before they could discuss further, the air in the center of the room shimmered, coalescing into the familiar form of Zara. But something was different. The alien being looked diminished somehow, her usual radiance muted. We have a problem, Zara said without preamble, her voice tinged with an emotion that could only be described as fear. The failsafe you activated, it didn't just affect humanity. It's resonating through the fabric of space-time itself, causing ripples that are attracting attention. Alexander felt a chill run down his spine. What kind of attention? Zara's form flickered, and for a moment, they saw through her holographic disguise to the true alien beneath, a being of pure energy, complex and beautiful beyond human comprehension. There are older races in the universe than mine, she said softly. Ancient beings that sleep in the void between galaxies. Your awakening has roused them from their slumber. As the implications of Zara's words sank in, alarms began blaring throughout the bunker. Sarah rushed to a console, her fingers flying over the controls. We're picking up massive energy signatures in orbit. Whatever's coming, it's big. The main screen flickered to life, showing a live feed from orbital satellites. What they saw defied description. Vast structures were appearing in Earth's orbit, their geometries so complex and alien that looking at them caused physical discomfort. The architects, Zara breathed, a note of awe in her voice. They have not been seen in this galaxy for billions of years. As they watched, smaller craft began to detach from the massive structures, descending towards Earth. But these were no simple flying saucers. Each ship seemed to bend and twist reality around it, leaving trails of fractured space-time in its wake. We need to do something, Alexander said, already moving towards the communications array. We need to warn people, to coordinate a defense. Wait, Sarah interrupted, her voice tight with sudden realization. Look at their flight patterns. They're not random. They're converging on specific points around the globe. A few keystrokes brought up a map, plotting the trajectories of the alien craft. Sarah gasped as the pattern became clear. My God, they're targeting sites of ancient megalithic structures. Stonehenge, the pyramids, Göbekli Tepe, and CERN. Alexander finished, the pieces clicking into place. That's why Evelyn was trying to access the Large Hadron Collider. She knew they were coming. Zara nodded, her form growing more substantial as she seemed to draw energy from the charged atmosphere. The architects seeded these sites eons ago, leaving behind technology beyond your comprehension. Dr. Frost must have discovered this somehow. But why? Sarah asked, frustration evident in her voice. What could she possibly hope to gain by awakening these beings? The answer came not from Zara, but from a new voice that filled the bunker, seeming to emanate from the very walls themselves. Ascension, Dr. Evelyn Frost's voice purred, rich with triumph. Humanity's next great leap forward. Screens around the room flickered to life, showing Evelyn standing in the control room of the Large Hadron Collider. But she was changed. Her body seemed to shimmer and shift, as if only partially anchored to this reality. "Did you really think I wouldn't plan for your interference?" Evelyn asked, her voice echoing strangely. "The failsafe you activated was the final key. It didn't just awaken humanity's latent potential. It opened the door for something far greater." As they watched in horror, Evelyn's form began to dissolve, merging with the strange energies that now poured from the activated collider. "The architects aren't here to invade," she continued, her voice now a chorus of 1,000 tones. "They're here to elevate us, to help humanity transcend its physical form and join them as beings of pure energy and thought." Alexander felt a moment of vertigo as he grappled with the scale of what was happening. "You're talking about the forced evolution of our entire species," he said, his voice hoarse. "Evelyn, you can't make that choice for everyone." But Evelyn was beyond hearing, her transform being pulsed with power, sending waves of energy through the Earth's ley lines, connecting all the ancient sites in a web of awakened alien technology. Zara's form solidified fully, her eyes blazing with determination. "We can still stop this," she said. "The architects respond to thought and intention. If we can unite humanity's will, focus their awakened potential, we might be able to communicate with these beings, to make them understand that we're not ready for this transformation." Zara was already moving, her hands flying over the equipment. "I can use the quantum entanglement network we set up to broadcast a message globally. But how do we get everyone to focus their thoughts?" Alexander's eyes lit up with sudden inspiration. "Music," he said. "It's a universal language. If we can compose something that resonates with the human psyche on a fundamental level, something that incorporates the mathematical harmonies of the universe, I can help with that," Zara said, her form beginning to glow with inner light. "My people have studied the music of the spheres for eons. Combined with your human creativity, we might be able to create something truly transcendent." What followed was a frenzy of activity unlike anything in human history. As the architect's ships descended and Evelyn's transformed being sought to reshape humanity in her image, Alexander, Zara, and Zara worked to compose a piece of music that would unite the world. They drew on everything: classical harmonies, primal rhythms, the subtle vibrations of quantum strings, even the background radiation of the universe itself. The result was a symphony beyond anything Earth had ever heard, a piece that spoke to the very core of human consciousness. As the music began to play, broadcasting from every speaker and device on the planet, something remarkable happened. People stopped fighting. They stopped panicking. As one, humanity turned its gaze to the sky, their awakened minds resonating with the cosmic melody. In orbit, the architects paused, their vast intelligences encountering something unexpected. The music carried humanity's message: their wonder, their fear, their boundless potential, but also their unreadiness for the transformation Evelyn sought to force upon them. For a moment that stretched into eternity, the fate of humanity hung in the balance. Then, slowly, the alien ships began to retreat. The ancient technologies at megalithic sites around the world powered down, and the energy pouring from the Large Hadron Collider subsided. At the eye of the storm, Evelyn's transformed being wavered, caught between humanity and transcendence. In the end, it was Zara's voice that reached her. "Evelyn," Zara called, her voice carried on the waves of the cosmic symphony. "Come back to us. This isn't the way. Humanity needs to find its own path." For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, with a sound like a universe sighing, the energies surrounding Evelyn collapsed. She fell to her knees, once again fully human, tears streaming down her face. As the music faded and the world held its breath, one of the architect's ships descended, coming to rest outside the bunker where Alexander, Zara, and Zora stood. A being emerged, a creature of such geometric complexity that the human mind struggled to comprehend it. In a voice that was felt rather than heard, the architect spoke. "You have surprised us," it said. We have watched countless species rise and fall, but never have we encountered one with such contradictions, such potential for both creation and destruction. Alexander stepped forward, his voice steady despite his awe. "We're not ready for the transformation you offer," he said, "but we hope that one day we will be. We ask for the chance to find our own way." The architect was silent for a long moment. Then, with a gesture that somehow conveyed both benediction and warning, it spoke again. "Very well. We will withdraw. But know this, you have drawn the attention of the cosmos. Others will come, some with intentions far less benevolent than ours. You must be prepared." As the architect turned to leave, Zara stepped forward. "I request permission to stay," she said, "to guide and protect, but not to interfere." The architect considered, then nodded. "Granted. Watch over them, Zara of the Cedars. Their path will not be an easy one." As the ship ascended, rejoining the vast structures in orbit, humanity collectively held its breath. When the alien fleet vanished in a flash of light that momentarily outshone the sun, a cheer went up around the world. In the aftermath, as the dust settled and the world grappled with its new reality, Alexander, Sarah, Zara, and a chastened Evelyn found themselves at the center of a maelstrom. The work of guiding humanity through its first steps into a larger galactic community had only just begun. But as they stood there, watching the sun rise on a new era for Earth, Sarah couldn't help but smile. "You know," she said, turning to Alexander, "when you stopped to talk to a homeless woman in the park, I bet you never imagined it would lead to all this." Alexander laughed, the sound full of wonder and hope for the future. "Sarah, I'm starting to think that with you around, I should always expect the unexpected." As they turned to face the challenges ahead, none of them noticed the small, innocuous-looking probe that detached itself from the departing architect fleet. It hung in orbit, silent and watchful, its mission only just beginning. The universe, it seemed, wasn't finished with Earth just yet. The greatest adventure in human history was about to unfold. 5 years had passed since the day the architects departed, leaving humanity to forge its own path among the stars. The world had changed in ways that would have been unimaginable half a decade ago. Cities now stretched into the sky, their spires intertwining with holographic displays that shimmered with alien mathematics. Transportation hubs hummed with the energy of nascent wormhole technology, connecting continents in the blink of an eye. But for all the technological marvels that had sprouted in the wake of humanity's cosmic awakening, it was the changes in people themselves that truly marked the dawn of a new era. In a sprawling complex that seamlessly blended cutting-edge Earth technology with alien architecture, Alexander Reeves stood before a wall-sized window, gazing out at the Martian landscape. The red planet, once a distant dream, was now home to humanity's first extrasolar colony. "Penny for your thoughts." Sarah Thompson's voice came from behind him, warm and familiar. Alexander turned, a smile playing on his lips, just thinking about how far we've come, and how far we still have to go. Sarah nodded, moving to stand beside him. The years had been kind to her. The haunted look that had once shadowed her eyes was gone, replaced by a quiet confidence. "The Galactic Council convenes tomorrow. Are you ready for your speech?" Before Alexander could respond, a shimmering portal opened in the center of the room. Zara stepped through, her energy form now comfortably visible to human eyes adapted to perceive a wider spectrum of reality. "We have a situation," Zara said without preamble. "The quantum entanglement network just picked up a signal. It's from the Void Dancers." Alexander and Sarah exchanged worried glances. The Void Dancers were a mysterious race that lived in the spaces between galaxies, their motives as inscrutable as their physiology was bizarre. "What do they want?" Alexander asked, already moving towards the holographic console that sprang to life at his approach. Zara's form rippled with concern. "They're requesting a meeting. With both of you, specifically." As the implications sank in, a new voice joined the conversation. "Well, isn't this interesting?" Dr. Evelyn Frost emerged from the shadows of the room, her entrance as dramatic as ever. Sarah tensed, old instincts dying hard, but Alexander placed a calming hand on her arm. In the years since the architect incident, Evelyn had undergone a profound change. Stripped of her transhuman ambitions, she had dedicated herself to helping humanity navigate its new reality, her brilliant mind now focused on bridging the gap between human and alien sciences. The Void Dancers never initiate contact, Evelyn mused, her eyes gleaming with curiosity. Whatever they want, it must be significant. As if in response to her words, the holographic display erupted with urgent messages from Earth. News of the Void Dancers' request had leaked, and the world was in an uproar. Speculation ran wild, from doomsday predictions to hopes of transcendent knowledge. "We need to get ahead of this," Sarah said, her strategic mind already formulating plans. "If we don't control the narrative, panic could spread." Alexander nodded, his fingers dancing over the holographic interface. "I'm calling an emergency session of the Global Unity Council. Evelyn, I need you to brief the scientific community. Try to keep wild theories to a minimum." As Evelyn nodded and moved to a separate console, Zara's form pulsed with sudden urgency. "There's more," she said, her voice tinged with an emotion that could only be described as cosmic awe. "The architects. They're returning." The room fell silent as the weight of Zara's words sank in. The architects, those inscrutable beings who had nearly forced humanity's transcendence, were coming back. But why now? And what did it have to do with the Void Dancers' request? Before anyone could voice these questions, a new presence made itself known. A figure materialized in the center of the room, its form constantly shifting between states of matter and energy. It took a moment for Alexander to recognize the being as one of the Weavers, a race of interdimensional entities that had made contact with Earth just a year ago. "The tapestried phrase," the Weaver said, its voice a chorus of whispers and thunderclaps. "The song of creation falters. The Void Dancers seek you because you are the unexpected note, the variable that changed the cosmic equation." Sarah stepped forward, her scientific mind racing to keep up with the metaphysical concepts being presented. "Are you saying that what we did, resisting the architects, choosing our own path, it affected something fundamental in the universe?" The Weaver's form shimmered in what might have been a nod. "The cosmos is vast, but not infinite. Patterns repeat, civilizations rise and fall in predictable cycles. But you—" It gestured to encompass not just those in the room, but all of humanity. "You broke the pattern. And in doing so, you may have opened the door to something unprecedented." As if to underscore the Weaver's words, alarms began blaring throughout the complex. Evelyn rushed to a monitoring station, her eyes widening as she took in the data. "We're detecting massive gravitational anomalies. Something's coming through, but it's like nothing we've ever seen before." The main holographic display flickered to life, showing a view of Earth's orbit. What they saw defied description. It was as if a piece of another universe was bleeding through into their own, its alien geometries causing visual distortions that made the human mind reel. "The Exirelens," Zara breathed, her energy form pulsing with a mix of fear and excitement. They were thought to be a myth, a race so advanced they transcended the boundaries of their own universe. But if they're here, then the situation is far more dire than we imagined, the Weaver finished. Alexander felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. In the span of a few minutes, what he had thought would be a complex but manageable diplomatic meeting had turned into a potential cosmic crisis. "All right," he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his mind. "We need a plan. Sarah, work with Evelyn and Zara to prepare a briefing for the Global Unity Council. We need to present a united front when we meet with the Void Dancers." Sarah nodded, already moving to compile the vast amounts of data streaming in from various sources. "Evelyn," Alexander continued, "I need you to reach out to your contacts in the fringe science community. If the Exirelens are crossing between universes, we need to understand the implications. and see if you can find any references to them in the data we recovered from the ancient sites." Evelyn's eyes lit up with the thrill of a new scientific challenge. "On it," she said, her fingers flying over multiple interfaces at once. "Zara, can you communicate with the architects? We need to know why they've chosen to return now, and if they have any insight into what's happening." Zara's form pulsed in affirmation. "I'll do my best, but be prepared for cryptic answers. The architects don't think in linear terms the way humans do." Finally, Alexander turned to the weaver. "And you," he said, "I need you to help us understand what's really at stake here. You said the tapestry is fraying. What does that mean for us, for the universe?" The weaver's form shimmered, expanding to fill the room with patterns of light and shadow. "Imagine reality as a vast tapestry," it began, its voice resonating on multiple levels of consciousness. "Each thread a timeline, each knot a decision point. For eons, the pattern has remained stable, with only minor variations, but your actions have introduced a new thread, one that doesn't follow the established weave." As the weaver spoke, the patterns of light coalesced into a visual representation of its words. Alexander and the others watched in awe as the cosmic tapestry took shape before them, a single golden thread standing out among the intricate weave. This new thread, humanity's choice to forge its own path, is creating ripples throughout the fabric of reality. The weaver continued. "The void dancers sensed it first, dwelling as they do in the spaces between. The architects return because they recognize the potential for vast change. And the Xyrillans, they come because they see an opportunity." "An opportunity for what?" Sarah asked, her voice hushed with the weight of cosmic implications. The weaver's form contracted, focusing into a single point of intense light. "To rewrite the fundamental laws of existence itself." The room fell silent as the magnitude of what they were facing sank in. This was no longer just about humanity's place in the galaxy, or even the universe. The very foundations of reality were at stake. Alexander took a deep breath, centering himself in the face of this overwhelming challenge. "Okay," he said, his voice steady. "We've faced impossible odds before. We'll do it again. But this time, we're not alone. We have allies across the cosmos, and the combined knowledge and potential of the entire human race." He turned to each of his companions in turn, seeing in their eyes the same mix of fear and determination that he felt. "Sarah, your scientific brilliance and indomitable spirit brought us this far. Evelyn, your ambition nearly doomed us, but your redemption might be the key to our salvation. Zara, you've been our guide and protector, bridging the gap between humanity and the wider cosmos. And you," he said, addressing the weaver, "you've shown us that there's more to reality than we ever imagined." Alexander's voice rose, filled with the same passion that had once driven him to build a tech empire, but now focused on a goal infinitely more vital. "Together, we're going to face whatever comes through that rift. We're going to meet with the void dancers, Harley with the architects, and find a way to stabilize the cosmic tapestry. Not just for humanity, but for all of existence." As if in response to his words, the complex's systems surged with power. Holographic displays sprang to life all around them, showing scenes from around the Earth and across the solar system. Humanity, it seemed, was rallying to the cause. In orbit, the first of Earth's fledgling starships took up defensive positions. On the ground, ancient sites hummed with reawakened power, their long-dormant technologies responding to the cosmic crisis, and in countless labs, homes, and gathering places across the globe, humans of all walks of life turned their newly awakened potential towards finding solutions. The rift in space continued to widen, the alien geometries of the Xyrillans' realm pushing against the boundaries of their reality. The Void Dancer's signal pulsed with increasing urgency, and the returning architect's ships loomed large in the sky. As Alexander looked out at the Martian landscape one last time before heading to the emergency shuttle that would take them to the meeting point, he couldn't help but smile. 5 years ago, he had been a tech millionaire whose biggest concern was his company's stock prices. Now he stood at the center of a cosmic drama, representing humanity in a crisis that spanned universes. "You know," he said to Sarah as they boarded the shuttle, "when I stopped to talk to you in the park that day, I never imagined it would lead to all this." Sarah laughed, the sound bright with the thrill of discovery and the weight of responsibility. "Oh, Alexander," she said, her eyes twinkling with the knowledge of 1,000 stars. "Our story was always written in the cosmos. We're just finally learning how to read it." As the shuttle lifted off, carrying them towards a confrontation that would determine the fate of not just their universe, but all of existence, Alexander felt a sense of profound rightness. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever cosmic forces they would face, he knew that humanity would face them together, united in their diversity, strengthened by their awakened potential. The universe had thrown down its ultimate challenge, and humanity, led by an unlikely alliance of a former homeless scientist, a redeemed tech millionaire, a repentant transhuman visionary, an alien guide, and beings beyond mortal comprehension, was ready to answer. As they accelerated towards Earth and the cosmic convergence that awaited them, Alexander realized that this wasn't an ending. It was, in the truest sense, a new beginning, not just for humanity, but for the very fabric of reality itself. The greatest adventure in the history of existence was about to unfold, and they were right at the heart of it.